Here are Brian Griffin's worst ever moments on Family Guy. First off, he made out with Meg drunk. Brian Griffin's had some bad moments, but trust me, this one is next level.
There's a dance Friday night and no one wants to go with me. Even my backup guy had plans.
Let's talk about the episode of Barely Legal, where Brian goes from being Meg's knight in shining armor to, well, something far worse. It all kicks off when Meg threatens to end her life because she doesn't have a date to her junior prom.
Brian, will you go with me?
Are you gonna kill yourself if I don't?
Yeah.
Well, then my hands are pretty much tied.
Out of pure pity, Brian steps up and offers to take her, thinking, how bad could it be? Spoiler alert, it gets really, really bad. They go to the dance, Brian drinks to survive the cringe fest, but at least he stands up for Meg, roasting her bully, Connie D'Amico. Not bad, right? But then the booze kicks in, and Brian kisses Meg. And not in the aw, that's sweet way, no,
I instantly regret this.
kind of kiss. He pukes right after and blames it on the alcohol. Classy.
Sorry, that was the booze, not you.
Here's where it gets worse. Meg falls for him hard. We're talking psycho-level obsession. She makes him a pie filled with her hair and even introduces him to her friends as her new boyfriend.
Oh, we're more than friends, Mom. Last night at the dance, Brian.
Well, last night we decided to be best friends.
Things go off the rails when she kidnaps him, ties him up, and tries to force him into a relationship. Brian, freaked out beyond words, confesses to Lois, who tells him to cut things off with Meg immediately. Brian tries to end things, but Meg knocks him out cold with a bag of dog food and drags him to a hotel for some seriously disturbing plans.
Is it bad if I saw Meg tie up Brian last night, put him in the trunk of his car, and then drive away?
What?
Luckily, Peter and the guy step in and put an end to Meg's madness before things got way worse. If you thought making out with Meg was bad, wait until Brian starts dating someone who literally can't see what a dog he is. Okay, that pun was so bad, but not as bad when Brian pretended to be human to get in a blind girl's pants.
Welcome to Disabled Ladies Night.
So yeah, it's Disabled Ladies Night at the Drunken Clam. This is Family Guy, just roll with it. And Brian meets Kate, a blind woman. Everything is going great. They even go to the movies because Kate insists that she hears, so good she knows what's being shown in the movies. That's until Brian finds out Kate hates dogs.
They're just slobbery, annoying, needy little bastards.
Instead of doing the right thing and telling her he's, a dog, Brian keeps the lie going. What's worse, he even drags Stewie into the deception.
I'm just gonna avoid touching her until a little more time has passed.
You know, I like your delusion, Brian.
He attends a dinner party with Kate and her parents, wrapped in bandages, with Stewie pretending to be his nurse. I mean, duh, what else could he have done? Anyway, things go pretty good at first, which Brian naturally loves, and when a dog loves something, they have to wag their tails. But when you're pretending to be a human, even one wrapped like a mummy, it's kind of a problem. Luckily, Stewie's there to help him cut it down. Literally. Of course, Brian eventually gets caught, and Kate, in the most dramatic way possible, storms out, setting off a fire alarm and causing a car crash. Smooth. And in true Brian fashion, what does he do the next day? Try to fool her again by using a different voice. Because that's definitely going to fix everything, right?
Hey, it's Noah from J-Date.
Oh my god, hi!
Well, if there's anything Brian should fix, it's his relationship with his son, because he was never above trying to use his estranged son to further his career. Brace yourself, this entry is a two-parter. First up, we've got the former life of Brian. Brian decides to rekindle a relationship with Tracy, a former flame, because, well, the last girl he was chasing and spending tons of money to impress had a boyfriend. Well, at least he was a great guy.
I'm unemployed, but that makes her feel useful in the relationship.
I'm gonna fix him.
After meeting Tracy, though, he's not exactly impressed. Turns out she's not the knockout she used to be.
And all he wants is to kiss you just one more time.
In a gentlemanly manner, Brian tries to bounce and save his tail, but just as he's about to leave,
This is Dylan. He's your son.
not exactly something you want to hear from someone you dated years ago. Reluctantly, Brian sticks around and bonds with Dylan, causing chaos before the two somehow find common ground. Eventually, Dylan goes to take care of his mom and Brian's off the hook. For now. But in Brian's a Bad Father, things get worse. Dylan's back years later, and now he's a TV star. Brian couldn't care less about his kid, but TV fame? Oh, now he's interested.
Wow, my son Dylan on a TV show.
Dylan, who's practically guilted into it, hooks Brian up with a job as a writer. But surprise, surprise, Brian's selfishness ruins everything. He tries to push his own work onto the show and acts like the big dog. The point is, Brian starts putting weird stuff into scripts.
Sometimes I just want to put this gun in my mouth.
Brian, you're fired.
Then, when he begs Dylan to help him out, his son finally realizes he's been used. Dylan gives him the harsh truth.
God, you're a terrible father.
But if you ever thought Brian was just a bad dad, wait until you hear about him cheating on his elderly wife. Brian Griffin's dating history is like watching a car crash in slow motion. Awkward, embarrassing, and impossible to look away from. Enter Brian's Got a Brand New Bag, where he hits a new low. Or should we say a high? Because this time he's dating someone way past her prime.
How old are you?
Oh, you don't want to know.
I kind of do.
Brian meets Rita, a woman who's older than expired milk left in Peter's fridge, and despite her age, he catches feelings. I guess love really is blind, or maybe just desperate. Things heat up quickly, and before you know it, they spend the night together. But when Brian tries sneaking out the next morning, the family catches him mid-creep, and naturally, they tear into him for dating someone old enough to get senior discounts on prune juice.
Did you see ya?
I'm looking at it now. I can see it from the window up here.
In true Brian fashion, he doesn't give up easily. He proposes to Rita because why not add engagement to his list of bad decisions?
Yes, Brian, I'll marry you.
They even try to make love, but Rita breaks a hip, leaving Brian with more responsibility than he signed up for. What's his response to this mature relationship? Cheat on her with someone younger, of course. His excuse? I'm not mature enough. Yeah, Brian, we could have told you that a long time ago. But Rita got it good. Remember the episode when Brian was stalking his coworker and then planting drugs on her? Brian Griffin's moral compass definitely doesn't point north, but in PD4, it goes completely off the rails. While Peter is busy impressing Vladimir Putin, yeah, you heard that right, Brian is busy being a complete creep at his new job at a suicide hotline.
Martha, gorgeous, headstrong, legs as long as spaghetti noodles, entered.
At the hotline, Brian meets Martha, an attractive coworker who isn't interested in him, but Brian, being Brian, doesn't take the hint. Instead of, moving on like a normal person, he decides to stalk her Facebook profile.
Oh, Grandpa's funeral. Baby look good in black.
At a funeral? Come on, Brian, how classy can you get? As fate would have it, Martha changes her mind and heads back to give Brian a second chance, only to catch him mid-creep session.
Oh my god!
Awkward. Desperate to keep his job and avoid further embarrassment, Brian frames Martha for drug use by planting drugs in her car. Oh, and that happens just as she was giving Brian another chance. Somehow, she felt he was complimenting her. I think he was tributing you, sweetie. Just as she's ready to give him another shot, she gets arrested. Karma strikes fast, though, because she pushes Brian down a flight of stairs in retaliation. You think Brian might learn a lesson or two? But nope, this guy doesn't quit when it comes to doing the absolute worst. His next offense? Giving Stewie and Chris an STD. Stewie and Brian are the show's most developed duo, and this episode kinda cements it. In Herpy, the love source, Stewie and Brian's bond as the show's ultimate odd couple gets tested in the worst way possible. Stewie, eager to cement their friendship, suggests they become blood brothers, sharing their blood to solidify their relationship. Brian agrees, knowing full well that he has herpes, but doesn't bother to mention it. Oh, we also find out that he has a similar connection with Meg.
Hey, are you blood brothers with Meg because you ate her tampon out of the trash?
No, that's something else.
The next morning, Stewie wakes up with maybe the most disgusting sore in all of TV. It sticks to the pillow and all. Ugh. After angrily confronting Brian, it becomes obviously clear that Brian has, in fact, given Stewie herpes. Oof. But it doesn't end there. While Brian tries to downplay the situation, Chris overhears the conversation and drops the bombshell that he also got herpes from Brian intentionally. And why did Brian give Chris herpes?
Maybe he was mad I gave him fleas. I don't know.
Yep, that checks out. Now, naturally, Chris and Stewie team up to ruin Brian's life as payback, crashing his date and hacking his Facebook account. Classic retaliation. Brian's apology isn't much of a consolation, though. Sure, he says he'll never lie again, but the damage is done. Out of all the grimy things Brian has done, this has to be one of the sleaziest. I mean, giving your best friend and a family member a lifelong condition just for fun? That's a new low, even for him. Honestly, this one has a real sting to it, and yes, pun definitely intended. Judge me all you want. I have no remorse, sort of when we saw Brian shooting a waiter without remorse. Meg gets kidnapped in Europe, but it's Meg, so who cares? Well, her mom does. FBI agents tell the family that they have 96 hours to save Meg, or she's done for. Stewie and Brian, our undynamic duo, decide to take the matter in their own hands, so off they go on a mission that makes Taken look like child's play. During their mission, Stewie arms Brian with a gun and silencer to defend him against some gangsters. At first, Brian is a little nervous about handling a weapon, but he quickly warms up to it. Like, really warms up. Then, just when you think Brian might have some restraint, he randomly shoots a waiter on a different boat. Not because the guy was a threat or anything, nope, just because Brian could. And the smug grin on his face after pulling the trigger? Yeah, that says it all. Oh, and did I mention it was his last bullet? Yep, Brian decides to leave himself completely defenseless just to show off, which makes the whole scene even worse. Smooth move, Brian. As for Meg, well, she almost gets married to a rich prince, but Stewie swoops in and ruins her fairy tale with one more well-placed shot.
Stewie?
Hi, Meg.
Whether he's giving his friends herpes, stalking a coworker, or, shooting random people, Brian really sets the bar for terrible behavior. But hey, at least he's a cute dog, right? If you're disgusted by the things Brian has done, wait until you see the worst things Lois has done in her life.